Sapiens. Chapter 1. Explained. How Harari redefines human origins. What if everything you thought you knew about the origins of humanity was wrong? What if humans weren't always the top of the food chain? In fact, for most of our existence, we were just another species trying to survive on the African savannah. In Chapter 1 of Sapiens, Yuval Noah Harari dismantles the heroic myth of early humans and gives us a much more humble and fascinating origin story. This chapter, titled An Animal of No Significance, kicks off the book's journey through human history by pulling us back 7,000 years into a world where Homo sapiens were just one of many human species and certainly not the most important one. So, grab your seat, because in this video, we're diving deep into how Harari redefines the human beginning, the surprising truth about our ancestors, and why understanding this chapter is key to understanding all of human history. To set the stage, Harari begins by situating Homo sapiens in the broader biological context of planet Earth. Around 13.5 billion years ago, matter, energy, time, and space came into existence in the Big Bang. Atoms formed, molecules bonded, and stars and galaxies emerged. Life itself began about 3.8 billion years ago, starting a long chain of evolution that would eventually produce plants, animals, and yes, humans. But humans are a very recent development. If we think of Earth's history as a 24-hour clock, Homo sapiens appeared in just the last few seconds before midnight. Harari emphasizes that for most of the time humans have existed, they weren't doing anything special. They weren't building cities or launching rockets. They were simply trying to survive, much like lions, dolphins, or ants. In fact, up until about 70,000 years ago, Homo sapiens were relatively insignificant. Harari emphasizes that for most of the time humans have existed, they weren't doing anything special. They weren't building cities or launching rockets. They were simply trying to survive, much like lions, dolphins, or ants. In fact, up until about 70,000 years ago, Homo sapiens were relatively insignificant. One of the most eye-opening facts Harari presents is that there wasn't just one type of human. Most of us grow up learning that we evolved from earlier primates in a straight line, from apes to modern humans. But that's a gross oversimplification. For much of prehistory, there were multiple species of humans coexisting. Besides Homo sapiens, there were Homo neanderthalensis, Neanderthals, stockier and stronger, adapted to the cold of Ice Age Europe. Homo erectus survived for nearly 2 million years in Asia. Homo floresiensis, a dwarf species found in Indonesia. Homo denisova, discovered only recently through DNA evidence. In total, there may have been 6 or more human species alive at once. So what made Homo sapiens different? At this point in the book, Harari doesn't fully answer that. It comes in later chapters. But here, he sets up the idea that our rise to dominance wasn't inevitable. We were just one of several hominid species, and not obviously the best adapted. In fact, some of the others, like Neanderthals, had bigger brains and stronger bodies. Homo sapiens originated in East Africa about 200,000 years ago. For tens of thousands of years, we were just another animal trying to survive. We lived in small groups, hunted and gathered food, and had no cities, no written language, and no long-term impact on the environment. Harari points out that for most of their early existence, sapiens were not dominant predators. They had to worry about lions, crocodiles, and hyenas. They often scavenged for leftovers rather than killing big game themselves. It wasn't until relatively recently that humans rose to the top of the food chain, and that leap had major consequences. Why does this matter? Harari's point is that our sudden rise to power was unnatural in evolutionary terms. Most apex predators like lions and sharks reached their position over millions of years. Sapiens rose in a few thousand. This rapid leap didn't give ecosystems time to adjust, and it didn't give us time to develop the self-awareness or wisdom to wield our power responsibly. This is part of why humans have caused such massive environmental destruction. We didn't grow into our power slowly. We surged into it, unprepared for the consequences. Another key idea Harari introduces is that the rise of Homo sapiens wasn't just bad for the planet, it may have been bad for other humans too. It's still unclear how the other human species disappeared. Did sapiens outcompete them for resources? Did we interbreed with them? Or did we wipe them out in violent conflict? The answer might be all of the above. Genetic studies show that many modern humans have small amounts of Neanderthal or Denisovan DNA, which suggests some interbreeding. But there's also growing evidence that sapiens were responsible for driving other species to extinction. Harari calls this the most significant mystery in human history. Why did Homo sapiens survive while the others vanished? The idea he plants here is powerful. Our ancestors may not have been the gentle, nature-loving beings we often imagine. They may have been ruthless, aggressive, and even genocidal. And yet, that aggression is part of what allowed us to become the dominant species on Earth. Harari ends the chapter by reframing the story of humanity. Instead of a triumphant rise to greatness, he paints the early sapiens as accidental conquerors. We didn't become powerful because we were chosen or superior in any divine sense. It was a combination of biological quirks, random mutations, and historical accidents. This chapter prepares the reader for the major themes of the book. Humans are animals. Biologically speaking, we're not so different from other creatures. Our dominance is recent and unstable. We may feel in control now, but that wasn't always the case. History isn't destiny. Nothing about human evolution was inevitable. Harari's goal is to make us question our assumptions. Why do we think human life has a purpose? Why do we see ourselves as special? He argues that understanding our true place in the natural order is essential if we want to understand ourselves and the world we've created. So what does Chapter 1 of Sapiens really teach us? It's a humbling reminder that we weren't always on top, and maybe we won always be. It challenges the idea that humans are somehow outside nature or above other animals. And it sets up the idea that our story is full of unpredictability, danger, and potential. Yuval Harari doesn't just want to teach us history, he wants to challenge how we think about ourselves. And this first chapter does exactly that. By the time you finish it, you'll never look at the phrase human nature the same way again. If you enjoyed this breakdown and want to explore how Homo sapiens went from insignificant animals to world rulers, stick around, because the next chapters dive even deeper into the cognitive revolution, myth-making, and the rise of civilizations. Thanks for watching. If this breakdown helped you understand Chapter 1 of Sapiens, leave a comment below telling us your biggest takeaway. And don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit the bell so you don't miss future episodes in our Sapiens series. We'll be unpacking each chapter and connecting Harari's insights to our modern world, from AI to capitalism, from religion to the future of humanity. Until next time, remember, we weren't always significant, but understanding where we came from might just help us figure out where we're going.